Thank you for tuning in to Andronetalks Radio, gathering as one in our sovereign truth from a galactic perspective, exploring our world with new ideas, knowledge, and a promise of a better future. Galactic discussions for galactic-minded people. Andronetalks.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today on Andronetalks Radio. And we have a special guest today that we've never had on the show before, but someone that I know has had a depth of experience and has some interesting information regarding Chaco Canyon. And so he and I both have visited there, obviously at different times. And so we're just going to discuss some of that information with him. So without further delay, we're going to bring in Dean Chambers.
Thank you for having me on your show.
Okay, Dean. So hopefully we have good reception throughout so we can have a good conversation. So why don't we get started by you sharing some of your own personal history? Because, you know, you were a politician, you've met some interesting people. Let's start from there. And, if you can provide kind of like a timeline, dates or something of that nature.
I think it's kind of important to go back when I was 4 years old.
Okay.
I had Depression era family. My dad would say, go to bed, 4 years old, climbing up the stairs, leave the light off. And I was scared to death of the dark. And I'd climb in my little crib, pull up the rails on the side, stand there, and these three little children would come out of the wall. And the only thing that I remember of the incident is they told me, you won't remember. And I didn't. So I was a contactee. Now, I don't remember being taken. I don't remember any ship experience. It wasn't until 7 years ago that I had an experience where I started to lose vision in my left eye. I want to speed this along because there's a lot of little stories. My wife was with me. She's since passed away. The doctor, an ophthalmologist said, oh, you just got a dirty contact lens. A long story short, they put me in for an MRI. They said, Dean, you have a benign tumor right in the center of your forehead, about the size of a walnut, maybe slightly smaller. And he says, that's got to come out. He says, it's not malignant. So the next day, 11 o'clock in the morning, 3 hours and 47-minute operation. They went up my left nostril, broke the bone, the dura, into the brain and drew out the whole, whatever it was there. Oddly, the doctor said, you had a biological implant. I have no idea why he referred to it that way, unless he's seen that before. But this is where things really start to happen, Jessica. When I saw the X-ray, the two hemispheres of my brain were even slightly moved apart because this tumor was there. So when it was removed, the two hemispheres of the brain came back together, and I start having epiphanies within 24 hours. I started getting transmissions. I mean, just massive amounts of information by good guys. I called them my upstairs. I even joked around with it. I said, well, who are you? What's your name? And then they said, you wouldn't be able to pronounce it anyway. And I pressed on. They said 579. Now, I've heard a lot of people that have had circumstance to have made contact with something, and they've always had a name. It's the first time that I ever heard of them referring to themselves as 579, and they gave no explanation. Later, there was another entity that came in called 11. But okay, that kind of brings us up to speed, because I get to see a lot of things and have things explained to me as a result of kind of having this access to these entities. And I'm not going to call them extraterrestrials or aliens, because that suggests they come from a planet on a star system, but an entity can be interdimensional, hyperdimensional, and can just pop in and whatever. So I do have a variety of, although an interesting thing happened just a couple of weeks ago when they said I wouldn't be able to pronounce their name. Well, I actually have to skip back, because they had taken me out into space one time, and there was a vertical column rainbow in front of me, wavy, brilliant colors, and another one to the right of it, and they approached one another, and they kind of conjoined into this big column of just unbelievable light, and they said, "This is 5D." When they came together, I heard this magnificent symphonic music coming out of them, which it was amazing. So now I'm jumping back to now. I began to realize that many of these objects that we see are actually entities. We see, what is it, cymatics?
Yeah. The vibration of the sounds.
Yes, well, that's them. That's an entity.
They are frequency. Yes, they are. Everything in the universe is frequency.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, these are specific individuals, and they change shape. So when they said I wouldn't be able to pronounce their name, they were quite accurate, because they were basically inside of a geometric design with sound and light and frequency and color coming out of it. So that's kind of like how I got acquainted to them. They really are the good guys, and I can ask them just about anything, anytime, and they just have mountains of data that I couldn't make up for the life of me.
Right.
Let's jump back. Let's cover, because we want to get to Chaco Canyon.
Oh, we'll have time. Just don't feel pressured. And if we don't finish it here, we'll finish it another day. So we'll go as far as you need to go. I think creating the baseline of your experience and your knowledge and insight and recall of what's happened is what's important at this moment. So, proceed and don't feel like you need to leave anything out.
I've had, I call it synchronicities throughout my life. When I was a mayor of a small town, I'm at a mayor's caucus, door opens up, in walks Barack Obama, walks right up to me, shakes my hand. It's kind of like I shook hands with the devil. But it was not him that we see today. The one that I saw back then was a very affable, gregarious person, warm handshake. He's been replaced long time ago. So the ones that they're trying to represent him, they have him either on ice or the original has been removed. But I've just always had synchronicities. I've been to China. I've studied in China, in Beijing. I've been to.
What year was that? When did you go to China?
The first time I went there for 30 days was in '93.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the second time was in '95. And that's when I studied in Beijing, healing energy work. Electric Qigong, they called it. I don't speak Chinese. I can say hi, hello, and thank you. You know how to be polite. I've been to the South Pacific for a month. my wife and I went down there on a vacation, and we flew into Fiji, which we spent 10 days there. We were over in New Zealand. We went over to Tahiti. I didn't care for Tahiti. It's French. They're kind of snobby. But we went off to Bora Bora and Moorea. So we were different places where different things happen. However, part of this baseline is I went to this island called Raiatea. Now, as you know, the Atlantic has the Bermuda Triangle.
Yes, it does.
It has the Pacific Triangle. It extends from north, which is Hawaii, to the far west, which is New Zealand, and over to Easter Island, which is the east. If you go into the center of those 3 points, you will be on an island called Raiatea. This island is unique because any island that had a king, if you wanted to become king, you became king on Raiatea. You had to go there. When you died, they took your body, they buried you in these sacred mountains on Raiatea and represented you on these large, like football fields, with a smooth stone. So I've been in the center of the Pacific Triangle for some reason. And that was just a phenomenal experience. I keep asking myself, why am I drawn to these different places? Why is this happening? I have extraterrestrials follow me around all the time, and I have proof. When my wife passed away, I took all my worldly possessions. I bought a barn. I was living on a farm in Oregon. A lady's wife died. She says, I got all this 5 acres here. You could come live here and, we could be friends and so on and so forth. Well, that certainly didn't work out. And I got thrown out on my ear. They broke into my barn and stole all my worldly possessions. So all I have left right now is an old RV from 1991 that I've been living in for the last 4.5 years with my puppy Padawan, and a few bags of clothes, and a couple guitars, because I play guitar. But I move out of this, and it's kind of like the universe said, we've got plans, you're going to move here, you're going to end up there. I ended up on this community of, it's really run down, old RVs, because they would take 4 dogs, and I had 4 dogs at the time. 3 have passed away since then. So I only have 1 left. But that's how I ended up here, and I've been here 4.5 years. Now, when I first got thrown out, I was living in my dogs were in a no-kill shelter, and I was living in this motel. And the road was, I don't know, 20 yards from my door. And across the street was a farm, a big farm field. And I went to bed on New Year's Eve by myself. I'd have to really think what year it was. I'd have to say, let me think about that. Okay. I'm in bed, I'm rolled on my side, and I hear a very clear voice in my head. It said, go to the window. I ignored it. And about 2 or 3 minutes later, Dean, go to the window. So I get up, I go over to the window, and lo and behold, over the farm field is this big, bright blue light. And I go, holy shit, holy shit, holy shit. I go get my smartphone, the phone that I have right now, and I start videotaping. I got about 1.5 minutes. Well, this big blue light separates into 5 different smaller lights, and they start doing a little dance in the sky, showing an intelligence because they were moving separate from one another. And stuff like this happens. When I moved and finally got out of Oregon and moved into Washington, on a clear night, we've had as many as 12 to 14 UFOs clearly in the sky, with revolving lights around them. So I don't necessarily think they're here for me, but I've had enough circumstance to think that I know something and I'm going to do something. I don't know exactly what it is. As I go along, I get like little pieces of the puzzle, but here I am, working hard to figure it out. And I am protected. I recently, there are demons out there. And I had an individual who she shall remain nameless, was surrounded by a lot of dark energy. And I kept telling her, you've got to get rid of this dark energy. The dark energy wanted me. And it came after my toric energy shield, which was a mistake because it's really highly fortified. You're not going to get through. I sent it on its way. I actually discharged a couple demons from the circumstance was attacking this one lady. And, 5 minutes later, she's opening the door and letting them back in. So I had to distance myself from that whole situation. The good guys say the demons can't get you. This dark energy can't get you because you have something you have to do. And they still haven't said specifically what it is. Here I am. I'm very, very, very grateful having my little puppy, having my health, having food to eat every day. I've been through months of rain, and this whole RV has been not leaking or anything, and it keeps me warm in the wintertime. So I'm very grateful for what I have. But I am really isolated from everybody. And I don't know if that's protection or whatever, but I am isolated from people.
I know that a lot of people that are experiencers go through very hard times. And, even Peter and I have talked about it because there was a time where they kicked my feet from under me. And, that there's something unnatural happening. And it forces you to go into another place that you probably would never go in a million years. And you're sitting there and you're watching everything just spinning around you, and you're wondering how in the world I get here. I've heard one story after another of people that have had complete attacks, and they find themselves in extreme poverty, or some weird situation happens, and then but still they're being held on to, like almost like by a thread, Dean. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
So.
And there has been a few people. One special I want to give a shout out to very briefly. Carolyn has been so generous in helping me pay the phone bill so I can have internet. I don't have a computer, so everything I do is this old iPhone. She's bought puppy food, and she's just been wonderful. So thank you, Carolyn.
Thank you, Carolyn. Yeah, there's some kind souls out there. And also there are the work that you do, Dean. You have a group, and you just do a lot of research, kind of like the one that I have is Super Sleuth, and she does all the research, and it's day in and day out. It's a lot of work in collecting articles and information, and I know you do the same thing. And so those people that you have been informing all this time, appreciate what you're doing.
Yeah, I've been doing it for 15 years. I'll give you an example. CERN in The Hague. They have a loop there. They opened a time portal, and they wanted to bring forth demons, dark entities. On that loop, there are different points of reference. One of them which had been bantered around and nobody really knew what they're going, oh yes, Alice, go down the rabbit hole and everything else. Well, Alice is a point on CERN's loop. We're creating this speed, and it's specifically identified as time travel, the Alice point.
We had a lot of discussions with Dan McBolin on these topics as well. I know I did. I don't know if you were interacting with him or not at the time, but when CERN kind of blasted everything out and started opening things up, yeah, it was a complete mess.
Well,
it was really bad.
Threw a monkey wrench into Alice, and the whole thing came to a halt. And you heard about the halt that happened. We were actually kind of impressed that we had such an immediate effect on the whole deal. We could clearly see what was happening, but that was one incident. That was one incident.
I think there were a few people, a bunch of people working on that at the same time, which helped.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
It was not two of us. For some reason, we collectively get together and we go do it.
Yeah. Let's get back into, I wanted to get back into, we're going to step back into your story a bit and talk about your childhood. So when you started to recall and remember who they were, can you describe this friendly group that would, I guess, ETs that showed up and were interacting with you?
They didn't show up in like a physical form unless I'm not aware of it. They have shown up as light.
Like a light silhouette?
Yes.
Sort of a silhouette? Okay.
Blue.
And blue. And what size? How tall were they? Or like, did they look like children to you?
They always told me they could be any size they want. It's just a matter. So whatever they did it for my benefit.
Did you ever get an impression of what star system they came from?
I can answer that by saying that as a child, I was always a sky watcher. And I was particularly fascinated with the Big Dipper. And I would follow the handle of the Big Dipper to the end. And the next star, which was a planet, is Arcturus. So I have an affinity towards Arcturus. And when I see blue, I've seen some representations of Arcturians that they were tall and blue. But they usually don't show stuff like, they'd rather just kind of mind meld and talk to me. And I practiced hypnosis 60 years. So I hypnotize and put myself into theta. I go into delta. And in those states, I hear very clearly. I hear very, very clearly. And so they have a lot of latitude that they can talk to me. They one time took me into a room psychically, astrally, and they said, you want some data. And this room was just floor to ceiling with data. You just could open up stuff and just drink it in, so to speak. I was awed. They have a sense of humor. My entities are always making little jokes here and there.
Right.
And I was always told that if they don't have a sense of humor, be careful. A sense of humor is a higher brain function. So I get that. They always seem to be around. They're
still with you.
They're here now.
Yeah.
Ask a question. I'll ask them. It's
okay.
Like, you know that. I was very impressed. Oh, you wrote like 4 books? You wrote a couple children?
I have 5 books. I have 3 children's books. Yeah.
Yes, it was wonderful. The Andromedas transmission.
Andronicus.
Andronicus.
Yeah. It's this book right here.
Yes. I didn't read the book, but you and I have a lot of synchronicities. We have experienced it, because what you were getting is kind of like what I get, you know?
Yeah, so you get, but you didn't write it down. And I know I'm not the only one that is getting streaming information. There are other people. Some people were angry that I had that information because they wanted it to agree with maybe a narrative that they already knew, and it didn't fit into that narrative. And some people even said, you have to change what you just said here. And I said, that's what they said. So you want me to lie, change it to fit into your narrative or your belief system? It's not even about that. It's just a conversation and information from a perspective. And you have to, gain your own understanding and grow and, try to figure out what your message is. But don't ever ask other people to change their message if they know that that was their experience. So there's people like you that did not write it down. You didn't ask them the questions, or for some reason they didn't want you to, or you didn't want to, or whatever. So, but there are people that do have information, and they can retrieve that information anytime. I too had experiences at a very young age of seeing ETs and so forth at a very, very young age. So yes, that's when they come in, they show up, they recognize you, they know what camp you're from. And it's not like an exclusive club. It's just, star seeds or whatever that are here, and they're having that experience. So I agree with you.
Millions and millions of people have similar experiences that never come out and talk about it.
No, you have to have a very strong personality. I mean, I guess maybe I'm even a little bit annoying. I just come out. I'm very, very solid about what I believe. And even as a young child, I came in very strong. So if someone wanted me to do something, I wasn't trying to be a leader, but I just was like, no, I'm going in this direction. You guys can all go there, and that's fine. And I was totally independent. And so if you're going to go out, purposefully and speak vocally, you really have to know who you are. You have to be speaking your truth, because people will find holes in your stories. They'll say, oh, well, I read that already somewhere else. It's either you have your own unique situation, share that unique situation. Some people have it, and then they try to conform to what everyone's saying so that it's accepted. So they change the narrative and so forth. Don't do any of that. You just tell the truth of who you are. And so you did the same thing. Now you said you were a mayor. So you have been politically involved. Kind of reminds me of like Simon Parks, who was politically involved and then started talking about extraterrestrial information and his connection in early childhood recalls. So, yeah. When was that you were the mayor, and what state was it in?
Illinois.
Illinois, and can you say what town?
Yeah, Oakwood Hills, small little town, 2,700 people. I was not a politician. I didn't sit on the board. My neighbors came to me and they said they want to sell out the farmland here and just do massive building. And they said, Dean, if you run, we'll support you. Well, it's 2 weeks before the election, so I had to run as a write-in candidate. I got a third of the vote, so I didn't win. And 4 years later, I did the same thing again. I got 84% of the vote, and I began being a statesman. I don't like the term politician. Politician is politics, bloodsuckers. I wasn't that. I represented the people of my community, and I didn't have no improprieties. If I was going to do something, it was to represent the will of the whole community rather than what a few people wanted. And we had kind of a rich section, a golf course where people made a lot more money than, and I was more in the medium class that wanted things a certain way. and it just didn't fit in. So yeah, but I mean, I got to pal around with senators and, House people and judges, and I really got a solid background in 4 years that most people wouldn't get in a lifetime. And I've kind of carried that with me. I've carried that with me. So
Yeah.
that was a high point of my life. My wife and I, we don't have any children. We chose not to. We wanted to travel the world, and we did. And my life.
I almost got when she passed.
We were together for 40 years. So it's just like suddenly.
Yeah, that's grieving and sadness too. Sorry to hear.
Yeah, it took years for me I was wandering around in a fog, and I'm still kind of in a fog, but I can see why I was directed to where I am and why. And I've got a lot to share. I kind of excited you, and I'm jumping around a little bit, because I really wanted to talk about this a little bit. The extraterrestrial in Chaco Canyon. And I went in through the Four Corners area with my buddy.
Right.
And I had my hand on a wall. You can't get in that area anymore. But when we went in there,
I was at the Four Corners, and I do have a picture somewhere, but maybe not in the area that you're talking about. But the area where that literally they have the flags and
it's like 35 years ago. They had nothing there. We were walking in there and looking at the side of. We're walking down a dirt road in the desert, and my buddy trips over this rock in the road. He bends down, and it's a quartz tower sticking out of the road. So he goes down, and we were looking for these pictoglyphs. So he goes down, he picks it up, looks it over, and we go like, wow, that's really nice. He says, here, put it in my backpack. I put it in his backpack. And the way he turned and the way I was turned, I looked over his shoulder, and there, about a block and a half in front of us, is the pictoglyphs on the side of the mountain. Hey, you guys, take a look over here.
You saw this over by the Four Corners, the pictoglyphs.
This is 35 years ago. I don't have all the details. I know this was Chaco Canyon we were in. We visited a number of Dead Horse Canyon we were in, and we stayed in. But specific to what you're talking about, we walked right up to the wall, put my hand on the wall. It was massive, 3-4 stories tall. You still there?
Yeah, so I'm sharing the screen. I don't know if you can see it. Here's Chaco Canyon. And there's this, is this the wall, something like this? You're talking about like the wall of stone?
Yes, it was a wall of stone, but there were no buildings.
No buildings. Yeah, that's correct. So all of this area right here.
And it was the Anasazi Indians, because we had talked to the park ranger. She said, this one thing, the 7 steps, it looks impassable, but you actually can get in. So we got there. But what I was trying to point out to you is this big figure, and I sent you the figure earlier before the show. It's the closest one that I've ever seen that is what I actually saw on the wall. And you have a Draco reptilian there that was basically ruling all those Indians that you saw underneath, that he was in charge.
Okay, so here is the location where the Anasazi were. I have a very unusual story about that I have shared with people in the past.
Well, Jessica, and I keep seeing the cliff dwellers, and it did see some cliff dwelling way up at the top. I didn't go there. We were walking down the road and saw this big picture and walked over to it. And
so then let me get that.
Go ahead.
You said we'll start off that you said originally the Four Corners. So this is the Four Corners area where it's actually a very touristy kind of place, but has the Native people do come together here, and celebrate, and different bands come together. Bands is a better word to use rather than tribes, I was told. And so you have this location here, which is a combination of Utah, Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico, all coming together. So then, we're talking about the back here. It was the Anasazi area. And then all of this is, within the same area, but there's some mileage between it. But this is the Anasazi area. And then obviously we have this picture that you're referring to. So I'm going to go back and grab that picture and share it with you.
So what we see here is, which was important, we see a size. We see little people. We can see like an animal down there in the lower left-hand side. Yeah, we see the little people there. We see somebody that looks like they're cloaked with lines running down through them.
This right here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, when you go to the central figure, and there was only one on the wall when I was there, and this picture has two because you could see another large figure. The wall that I was at, had I taken my hand and followed this particular wall all the way to the left side, I did not. I was amazed on how big it was. This is a Draco reptilian. I found out later. And he has a helmet on. He has a helmet on because...
like this right here?
That's well, the other ones with their kind of big eyes, they have helmets on as well. Because
and here's these right here, Dean.
Yeah, I had that picture too, but that's really not what I saw.
What you saw was something, this was the closest to what you saw.
That's the closest to what I saw. These beings were giants, and they were accustomed to breathing oxygen about 3.5 times more than what humans breathe on the planet, because the planet had been adjusted for lower oxygen to make us grow smaller, and we were supposed to be much taller. That's why when we go back, we find giants being representative of us. But that was all turned around because they didn't want us big and whatever. But there was a portal in that wall that was actually, I was told it was a 7G holographic projection. It was way on the left-hand side, on the bottom. Had you gone down there, you could have pushed your hand right through the wall. You could have gone behind the wall and then found that there were actually labyrinths behind this whole stone face that we were looking at, because it was, a mountain basically. And there were 24 labyrinths behind there. And we know that extraterrestrials were there because the last one they had optical discs. And we, of course, know that the government is in possession of those, but it was showing a certain level of technology that just did not exist back then. Going back to what you were saying a little earlier about Four Corners, when I went into Four Corners, it was like nothing that you showed me in any of those pictures. There was nothing there. There was a sign that said
35 years ago?
Yeah, 35 years ago. There was nothing there. Nothing. They built it
I believe you.
Nothing. No touristy, no little Indian dances. We didn't see any Indians at all. We talked to a park ranger before we went in. We went up Flint Trail, which was, that scared the bejesus out of me. I videotaped the whole thing. I videotaped the wall. I took really great pictures. Everything was stolen from my barn that I had. All the represent. The only thing that I have is what I remember. And when they removed that tumor, my memory went up like unbelievable. I remember everything. And I remember stuff in great detail too. I remember being born, Jessica.
Yep, I do too.
Yeah, when I was born, it was C-section, and there was a spirit there who only needed to go through the gestation period, and was out of there. So the baby was going to be stillborn. And I said, I'll jump in. I recall the whole birth process. So.
Yeah, go ahead. So you said the child was going to be stillborn and you decided to come in and as a walk-in to take over. Yep.
And I did.
Yeah, you hear about these miracle babies, you know, people that think that the baby wasn't supposed to live. And then then the baby comes through and the baby usually has a gift or something, you know, that they say that the child is exceptional and that has something to do with it, that there's someone else there. And in your case, obviously.
Yeah, I think that when I was 4 years old, that I was taken. And I always said I was taken, even though I don't remember. And they did implant. They went up my nostril and they implanted something in my brain. And I didn't find out about it till 7, 8 years ago when they removed it. And for the doctor to say that he removed a biological implant, I almost fell over on the floor. I didn't expect him to use that type of language.
Yeah, getting back to that, I was interested in having you talk a little bit more about that because you're right. They don't usually say this is a biological implant because they knew that it was not organic and that it didn't look like a typical tumor. So
it was more like, not to gross out anybody, like a pimple. And they just drew it out through a stainless straw, and they drew all of it out. The brain went back together. My IQ went up. My psychic abilities went up. My telepathic abilities went up. Within 48 hours, that's when I got whisked into outer space and saw these wavy rainbows. I got taken into a room, much like in the Matrix, a white room that it was actually like being inside of an egg because you couldn't see any corners and it was pretty big. And my friends started talking to me.
Yeah.
And they had me put a suit on that was on the floor. And they said that it was a time travel suit. And they were going to demonstrate it to me. And they said, you see where you are? You have this thing on the floor. We're going to take you around the world. And it was like, and I was like 3 feet behind where that thing was on the floor. And I didn't feel any motion whatsoever, but I was pretty much in awe. The suit they gave me looked exactly like motorcycle leathers. It was black. You had your chaps that you put on and zip up. And when I put them on, they turned white. The same thing with the coat. And then I also had kind of a skull cap I put on that turned white. At the very end, I look across the room and there's 4 other people. I never talked to them. I never approached them. They were a good 25 feet away. There was 1 woman and 3 men, and they were all putting on the same suit that I was. And then I was gone out of that whole scenario. But I remember it clearly, like it was like a lucid dream because I remember it clearly and vividly like it happened 2 minutes ago. So, I came forward with some of these things going, I better keep my mouth shut or people are going to really think you're nutso or something. But nonetheless, that's what happened. That's exactly what happened. And that's why I report that.
Did you have invisibility properties when you said that the whole uniform turned white?
I don't know why. I'm just telling you what happened.
But you don't know what the abilities were that were.
Oh, I do. Yes, the suit was, they told me it was time travel. They said specifically, it's for time travel. Go forward in time and go back in time and see things that other people don't see.
Do you remember the program that it was called? Because I think you just posted something with all the different programs that,
Yeah, there was no program attached to it. Back when it happened, it was just put this on, it turned white, and they said you could do time travel with it. Did I do time travel back then? I didn't. I did not.
The reason why I'm
asking. Yeah, years and years later, did I come to some sort of awareness that I was getting glimpses of this and that, and I was going, hey, that's kind of weird. And I could go back and I could kind of see things. Now remember, I've hypnotized myself so I can create theta.
So, well, the reason why I brought up programs, because you had met Barack Obama while you were actively involved in politics at an
Yes.
earlier time. And he was from Project Pegasus, according to Andrew Passaggio.
Yeah, the attorney was to, what's his name? Andrew Passaggio.
Mm-hmm.
So I go back to Project Pegasus, and I do remember that.
So what I was wondering is, sometimes people meet certain people because there's an association of some nature. Do you understand what I'm saying? So Andrew met Barack Obama, who was Barry Soetoro, right, at that time, and they were both from Project Pegasus. That you would be pulled into the loop is an association with the program. People usually connect to one another, even though it seems like, well, how did I meet that person? Well, there is a common thread. I'm just saying it's a possibility that you two were.
I've had way too many synchronicities not to agree with you wholeheartedly, because it's like I'm at the right place at the right time. And then in walks so-and-so, and I'm going, wow. So yes, Andrew Passaggio, a Canadian attorney.
Yeah, Andrew went through a whole lot of difficulties, and he also had eye problems. And you were talking about something happened to your eye, and which prompted a surgery. So I'm just, trying to, looking at it from an objective point of view, that there is a possibility, and I know, and I understand. I've been working with Peter closely regarding the kind of the modus operandi of programs, whether it's this SSP program as opposed to my labs, as opposed to corporations in how they operate. So kind of looking at the modus operandi of different ones. And so from my experience, I know that if I'm associated with certain people and I know that they're part of a certain program, that at some point I had met them in that program, and they have the whole 20 and back thing where you have years and years that you're interacting with these people, and then you're reset into this timeline. So there's a familiarity, but can't quite put your finger on it. You know what I'm saying?
That's exactly correct.
There's a lot of information that people are coming to light, and I'm not saying Peter created the knowledge of the 20 and back, but he has worked with individuals personally and has helped them to recall information, because they similar to you, where you had that implant that blocked your recall. Many other people have something like that. That's why this is extremely helpful to people if they understand. Now, I am definitely not encouraging people to go get a brain surgery of some sort. I don't want anyone to harm themselves. But maybe in time, as technology becomes even more advanced, people can observe and see if there's some kind of foreign matter in some of these different implants. And other people have found implants in different places, whether it's in their ears or in their skin, in their eyes. I've heard people even pulling things out of their nose. I think maybe that someone that we both know called Davey, I believe he talked about something like that. So there's many people who have had implants. So that's really, really interesting about what you experienced. And I think that will help a lot of people to understand that those recalls came back to you. But typically, a lot of people have to go and find out what their history was and what they experienced. And that's been a lot of the work that we've been doing over the past couple of years. It's helping people to remember.
I want to explain to people 20 and back, because I know what it means. You know what it means. But they could take an individual and time travel them, and as a child, 17-year-old, 18-year-old, get ship them off to Mars or someplace, get 20 years of service out of them, do a time travel, send them back where they're only have left 2 minutes, and they're exactly where they are. Sometimes they clone them as well. That's another thing that I found out. The people that do a lot of time travel, they have taken the original and replaced it with a clone, and they also can take the original's consciousness and put it into the new improved body, if you want to call it, or whatever. What they can do from the alien technologies and those 6,000 technologies that came forward back in the 40s over here, and it's not just the 40s. We've been doing stuff since, before World War I. Did I lose you? No. So
no, I'm just doing a shared screen. So on the ACIO site, we have information on 20 and back.
Okay.
That Peter has provided that. We actually did a video on it. It kind of describes some of the experiences. But yeah, there's recruitment. But see, he really was very adamant with me and said the 20 and back is not all of the programs. I mean, time travel is not all like SSP. Some of it has different types of missions. And so there's a different experience, as opposed to if I go onto the website and then look at all the corporations. So the worldwide military corporations, and then they have positive corporations. And then, of course, the negative ones, they too will take people, particularly as Monarch, Mobius, they'll take people in time travel with them and do a similar thing as the space program, but with a different outcome and a different agenda, and to better their cause as opposed to for the planet. So it's a whole separate situation. But yeah, it's a very complex thing that we've been, kind of trying to bring forward and provide information regarding this knowledge, while other people are having recalls and remembering that they have been participating in these programs. So like I said, not every day people meet certain individuals, but when they do, it does kind of raise an eyebrow. You have a very interesting life. Like you said, you went from traveling worldwide, kind of dabbling in the political venue, and then doing all of your research and disclosure regarding, some of the current things that are happening around.
I've been driven to do that, Jessica. I've been driven. I have a resolve that I have to get this information out because so many people are asleep. The percentage of people that have been put upon, either injected with self-replicating nanotechnology, alien DNA, whatever you want to call it, are being influenced by something. I hope you're still there. Nod your head.
Yeah.
Yeah. There you go. We were hoping that on the planet Earth there was 12% of the people that are still pure, and we are down to. We'd be happy with 1%. Think about that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not really sure if I 100% want to put that out there to the public, but because for different reasons, there are a lot of people that are stuck in different things, in illusion and so forth, which are creating distortions.
I agree
of
with you.
statistics.
Well, you could strike that.
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, it's okay for people to have differing views, and especially statistics that I think we can't quite measure, but we can see the outcome of the percentage of people that are interested in these topics or that are open to it. We've had a lot of people that have awakened when the crises have happened, and then many people decided that, and then there were some things that happened with disclosure people that kind of put people off, and so they just said that they don't want to listen to it anymore. So we've had some pros and cons and things working to our advantage to help awaken others, and then things working in the opposite direction. But yeah, that's for another conversation, I think. And I think maybe let's swing it back to the original conversation of the experience in Chaco Canyon, which I thought was very, very interesting. And you said something that no one else has said. And it made me really think about it, because I'm just going to share quickly again. I'm going to go to our website. And
by the way, that red and white, I have that.
The Umbrella Corporation.
Yes.
And what do you mean by that? You have that?
Well, that's a Knights Templar symbol.
No, that's the Umbrella Corporation, which is involved with doing some nefarious things. I don't believe it's the same. Well, it might look similar, but
yes, it is similar. It is that red cross that comes together. I have a ring. I'm a Templar. And I served as a commander of Templars. So I'm a past commander of Knights Templar. I have a ring that I have gotten. It came from Paris, France, from the mid 1800s, and it's that symbol except in a square in 18 karat gold. I had that ring. I had a jeweler friend, and I used to go to gem shows, my wife and I. He says, and I know you're a Templar. And he said, here, I got this ring in from an antique dealer. It's out of Paris, France, from like 1830 or something. It's an 18 karat gold. He says, you could tell it came from Europe because the stamping is on the outside of the band of the ring rather than on the inside like they do in America. So, yeah.
You see something like this? See the sword on the side, and
yeah, it's not round though, it's square. The front
square.
Is square.
Okay.
Yeah, that's in a square. See, that's why the red and white one, it's in a square thing like that, except set in 18 karat gold. It's gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous. And stop, wait, go down a little bit, where you were before on the other left side. Come up a little bit. All right, stop right there. You see the red? Now go to the one to see how fine it comes together in the middle. No, not that one. Go over to.
This one?
Yeah, actually, that's a little closer to what I have. But you see how, come down one and go over to the left one. Yeah, that one. Do you see how fine it comes together in the center? That's how my ring is, and it's cut out. So it's really quite exquisite.
You know, it's almost like the four corners we were talking about.
Yeah.
The four stakes coming together, and it comes to like a little point. So this is what it looks like. That literally, that's what it looks like right here. See that woman?
Yeah.
That's it.
That wasn't there though.
It has as people like laying on it. It has this area right here. See that? And then people are selling things, which I have some jewelry from there, which is quite beautiful.
Yeah. None of that was there when I was there.
Yep. No, I believe you. So we could probably look at when it was built and everything. But here's a map.
Well, you know, something else we got to keep in mind is the underground facilities.
Right.
And the tunnel systems. That's mind-boggling. And what they connect underground across the country, across the world, is mind-boggling.
There's a lot of activity that goes on in this area. Now, so I was going to get back to that image that you showed me earlier and how you said it was reptilian. Now, so there's glyphs. There's you know, definitely all the images in the chambers and so forth that they talk about. But that image, now, a native person watching this might be offended, as someone that lives in that area, maybe offended that we're looking at some of this information, but I think it's necessary for us to take a look at it because it affects us. It's not just, you know, I know that there are people that, you know, have taken ownership of the wing makers, and they say that, you know, that they're the only ones that are allowed to talk about it and so forth. And, And then Peter told me, well, they're part of the 15th division of the ACIO. And so it is part of the ACIO. Otherwise, I would completely leave it alone. I do have a connection to the Native people. I did Sundance, which not a lot of people have done Sundance. I was invited to be a part of it. I was invited to also help create a Sundance, but I pulled away because I don't have any Native genetics. And I
Right.
felt that it was an imposition. Like, I wanted to be respectful,
I
but
understand.
over the years, I've had so many people that have really liked what I'm doing or have, backed me, in so many different ways and want me to talk about some of these things. And I supported the Native cause of what they call the Day of Mourning in Plymouth, Massachusetts, where they would, celebrate every year or talk about what they felt had happened to them during Thanksgiving and the inequities and so forth. And I used to videotape and interview all those people. I have footage, so much footage I've never put together of some of the experiences, including there were representatives from multiple bands from around the US as well as Canada. And I talked to so many of them. But I do like to, when I went into Chaco Canyon, I was very respectful that this is a space that the ancients have been in for many years in the first people or First Nations, as they call it. I have a friend that sent me a beautiful, made me a beautiful shawl. I don't know if you can see it.
Yes.
And I just wanted to, share. I have a drum up there, even though it's sort of like Celtic, but it is. And this is something else that they gifted me.
Yes.
So I have different connections for different people that know that I'm supportive of, who they are and the beautiful spirituality that they carry and how their spirituality has helped sustain the earth in many different ways. And we always have to be mindful of that. We have like people that are like the indigenous of different areas. And I too was my family lineage is indigenous from the area of Italy, so I'm Italian, but we do have the Etruscan group that were kind of a little bit nomadic, and that's so I understand it and I respect different nations that have that expression, and I know you do as well.
ACIO taught me a lot. A lot of things I identified with the way things were broken down into different levels, going all the way up to 15. And it was refreshing to see that there was more information out there than just what I surmised. When my friend Bobby and he was a Chicago police officer too, by the way, he was my best friend. We were just free spirits. We were in his old Jeep CJ7, heading out into the desert, looking for adventure with nothing more in mind whatsoever. No history, didn't know what we were going to find. We were just having a good time, and that's what we did. And we kind of like let the universe guide us, and it certainly guided us right to that pictoglyph on the side of the wall, which that was very impactful. That was very impactful on me. But
Well, I believe that the wing makers came there. They were a beautiful, like angelic group of some sort with beautiful wings. They left a lot of messages, but then there were other beings that showed up, ETs, and as you pointed out, one of them was very likely reptilian. And so you have people that are connected to the reptilians and have their own niche of what Chaco Canyon is to them. And then there are others that are connected to the wing makers, which is what we're connected to, which were these incredible beings, these large beings that were messengers that showed up there.
The ones that I was talking about, they wanted to subjugate the population. They wanted to imprison them. And as a matter of fact, I was told how they disappeared, and we know which directions they went, and so on and so forth. A lot of them were just taken off the planet.
Right. Well, that some of them are still here because you could still feel the tension around the topic, and a lot of people don't want to talk about the wingmakers to us. They want to talk to other people, which is fine. They can, but they it seems like they deliberately avoid us in the conversation, and that's an interesting behavior. I thought it's kind of says something to me. So, and I don't pursue it a whole lot.
It's
I think that it's kind of, I don't know if it's sort of exclusive or niche-y or there's something going on there, but I think people feel like they know it all on that topic for some reason. And or they have read the book or the information, and then they want everything to just stay there. But if they came from the ACIO, then they came from the ACIO, and they're forerunners of what we're doing right now with Peter in providing information, which was not always open to the public. So when you step into that space as, say, a civilian or person that is not from that region, you are stepping into a point in history where there was something really profound that happened. And so the ancient people archived it. They put everything together. It's such a mystery to so many people, but also it's a very, very fragile, protected area because of the First Nations people had lived there, had, taken care of it, had made sure that nothing happened to it.
Do you know somebody called Soul Wildhair?
Yeah.
She's a lovely lady. She came all the way out here with 50 pounds of food and some canned goods that she made for me and gave me a big hug. I hadn't been hugged in 5 years.
She's a sweet soul, and she's quite a gardener, like really talented gardener.
She was telling me that, but it was just so nice. And of course, I bagged up some food for some of the other dogs here and passed it out. And, we share what we have because that's what you do, But here's a perfect perfect situation to really put that to the test, because you have to do it. You have to do it. I live across a lake called Silver Lake too, by the way. I want to throw something out there that you might find interesting. Now, you know that I had the implant removed when the doctor said, well, that's got to come out. And he took it out. Years later, I was telling you the story about getting tossed out of where I was, having all my stuff in my barn absconded with, ransacked. I'm in a motel on New Year's Eve, and I hear a voice, go to the window. I told you the whole story, that I videotaped it. I have the footage of the craft, how it came apart. But I want you to know the next day I'm just laying there because I'm going to be staying there, and I get up to use the bathroom. And oh my God, on my right foot, on the bottom, hurt like I had stepped on a tack or something. So I come back hobbling back into bed. Now remember, I had this experience that I'd videotaped just the night before, because now it's New Year's Day. I look at the bottom of my right foot, and I have a black implant. It's about the size of a peppercorn. And I took pictures of it, which I still have. You can clearly see it. No puncture wound. It's kind of like it was put there. And after several months, it kind of went in. It's still there, but it went in further. So I asked, I said, what is it? And the good guys kind of chuckled. They said, well, we just want to keep tabs on you, so we know where you are. So I have one on the bottom of my left foot. Excuse me, my right foot.
So you still have it there?
I still have it. It's not as, you can't see it. When it first happened, I took pictures of it, and I pulled my toes back, and I said, look at this. And you could clearly see something black underneath the skin. And if you do reflexology, you would see it right in the kidney meridian. It's like a ball. It's right smack in the middle of there. And it hurt like hell. I could not walk on it. And, 45 minutes earlier, I was taking a nap and I get up and the bottom of my foot it was incredibly painful. I still have it. It kind of like went in deeper, like behind some tissue or muscle or whatever's on the bottom of your foot, and it's still there, but I can palpate it with my finger if I look for it. So they're keeping tabs on me.
Yeah.
Keep tabs
It
on
doesn't hurt you though. It doesn't hurt you anymore.
No, it hasn't. It only hurt for a couple days. And I took some clear pictures of it. The thing that I was most impressed with is the fact that there was no entry wound. It wasn't like it was like it wasn't there and then it was there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if other people you were talking about other people have some things under their skin. Some have it by their ear. Some people have it by their eye. Well, you kind of I said, I got to tell her about the one I got to the bottom of my foot.
Yeah. I mean, and implants are very controversial. Some people are very angry about it. Sometimes people get severe headaches and they really want them out. There are other people that feel like they can get activated by them, kind of like the graphene oxide, what that's doing, and kind of hooking people into a system that they have no control.
That's exactly correct.
Right. So that's, it's controversial, from different perspectives. Some people are okay with their implants. They feel like, oh, well, they're using me, that gives me access to time travel and to do certain things. And then other people feel kind of angered by it. So it's one of those things that people are learning about and making their decision regarding what the outcome is or what they want, what they don't want. And, we are operating on a free will kind of paradigm, but not a lot of people recognize it and take advantage of that part so that they can have that. Because for example, that implant that you had in your brain, I mean, it sounds like a highly risky operation, but in the end, it really worked to your advantage. So I'm very happy for you. And it probably brought back a lot of memories. So that's why you're here.
Another thing that's important, other than, having the normal childhood shots that you can't get away from, I never got any of those shots. I have 0 tattoos on my body. I have not even a speck of graphene oxide anywhere. And I don't have any mutilations either. I don't have any piercings, holes in my ears and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, then we have soldiers that do have all of that. So, I mean, I guess I know what you're saying, though. It's
speaking about me, though.
Yeah. I mean, in a sense, I know what you're saying. You're organic, you're less influenced, but maybe then you have an implant, so that kind of maybe counterbalances it a little bit. But who am I to say? I don't know. I mean, it's on an individual basis at this point because there's so much of this going on.
I can see, and especially when I do come across somebody, I won't say any names, but I look in their eyes and their eyes are slightly glazed. And it's as if they're a brain dead zombie walking around. They have critical thinking and they've lost common sense. And I found that people that don't have common sense have a tendency to regurgitate the narrative. They regurgitate what they've been told over and over and over and over again, and you hear it coming out of their mouth. They don't know why, but they have to say something, and they say what they've been told to say.
Well, I feel that with a lot of people that are just repeating the narrative, and sometimes it's to be an influencer, to be popular, to fit in, and like I said early on in my life, I wanted to do what I felt was true rather than just to fit in, although you become the lonely one on the side, and not everyone will agree. But yeah, it's easier to go with that flow.
This world has gone insane. This world has blanketed with some frequencies that are interacting with either the glyphosate that's have been ingested through spraying plants, that whole Moderna thing, fluoride in the water, having gender disassociation like atrazine in the water and other chemicals,
right.
Frequencies that are just sometimes subliminally added into programming that you would watch, like the flicker rate on TVs and things like that, and you don't even realize you put it all together, and the person is like semi-comatose, walking around, don't even know what's going on. And I think I respect women greatly. I see them as equals, and but I've seen women, especially the ones that go these radical colors in their hair, that there's something really, really radically different about them. And it's almost like they're wearing it like a badge to show everybody that, they're a bit psychotic. They're demonstrating psychosis. Women just getting out there and screaming, having, your primal scream out there. And don't even know why, and they're walking around crazy. You see less men, you see more women. I don't know why. I'm just stating what I see. And you go, why?
Well, aside from the Antifa, there were a lot of men, young men. It's a generational thing too, Dean, that a lot of us are like trying to understand what's going on, and unless you're kind of in their camp, you can't really take in what their thought process is. And also the educational system has drastically changed since I was in school. And I even went back to school, and I saw a huge jump when I went back to school after I had my son. And the things that were important as far as education, it was really weird. And it was very much a waste of time. It didn't really create any type of knowledge. And I know many kids that are graduating, they're saying, I don't really know what I've learned.
Yeah,
I mean,
rather than education.
Absolutely, because then they try to go into a specific field. They don't have the information. They really have to start from ground zero and then teach themselves. And believe it or not, some of these kids are figuring out that they can go online and learn more than what they learned in their school, obviously for a lot less money.
And the internet really was the big mistake that the cabal made, because they kept us in the dark for a long, long time. And what happened?
Don't tell them. Don't tell them.
They will. They will. And Antifa is just the anti-fascist Nazis that came out of Germany. They used the exact same symbol. And when they had the Operation Paperclip, and they moved all those because of Warner von Braun and the whole rocket thing, we wanted to have their toys. So we wanted Warner von Braun over here, and we brought over all those scientists. And immediately the CIA is created. Well, CIA doesn't mean Central Intelligence Agency. There's nothing central about them. There's nothing intelligent about them. They are the communist infiltration agency, because ever since they came here, that's what they do. They are out and out communists. They make no lies to hide it, and they infiltrate everything. That's what they do. So call them what they are. That helps reveal them a little bit more. Trump's a saint, in my opinion. And we're going to be really, really impressed when we see what Barron does in the future. We've seen him down the timeline. They've managed to keep him really quiet and out of the spotlight, but he is going to come across, and it's going to start next year when he's 18.
What do you think about he has incredible height, for his age, or for any age matter. He's tall.
It's a hybrid.
Yeah. And of course, we know he's already a time traveler.
Yep.
Yeah.
So is Trump. That's why Trump won, because they had originally.
Because their uncle was friends with Tesla. Trump's uncle.
Impressive. Huh. Yes. John Trump, or whatever his name's, sitting there with Tesla, and you got the young, Trump over there watching what's going on. This guy was plugged in from the beginning, and they had originally taken Trump. He was doing the I keep saying Harper. It's not Harper. He did a talk show in like the early 70s or something, and the woman host, she said, "Well, would you ever consider being president?" And he, of course, oh no, he was already a billionaire. Why would you want to do that? And the good military came and scooped up his little butt, and they time traveled him and showed him what he was capable of doing in the future. Then they put him back. He was back on the show, and his answer changed to, well, if they really called upon me to do something, I would do it. But he knew quite well that he was immune from a lot of this darkness that was attacking all the presidents, the Clintons, the Bushes, all those, the Obamas, all those people. He was immune from it. They couldn't get to him, no matter what they wanted to do. And Melania, she's going to be another one. She is going to be the woman's champion in the world, because not only is she a beautiful woman, but she's brilliantly intelligent, and she's a hybrid as well. In my opinion, part Palladian.
Yep.
You needed some of that influence in here, because there is so many. You're either biological, you're a synthetic, or you're a hybrid. And there's variations in between, but pretty much fall into one of those categories.
The situation with Trump is very complex. There's definitely a power structure that he had connected to. I recall seeing him in various timelines all at once, and he was powerful in every single one of them.
Yep.
Somewhere along the line, he had an enemy. I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't something related, the entity in Pence, but that he definitely had something that was kind of,
Did you say Pence?
Yes.
As in the Vice President Pence?
Yes.
I got a little background story on him. The CIA.
Yeah, I've seen him astrally doing things, and I was like, well, I bet that he went and kind of just some of the things that Trump did. I think he went and followed up and scrubbed out some of the stuff that he did. I think he was involved, because I saw him actually, the persona of him, the entity that was in him, literally posing as Trump a few times. It was very weird. Go ahead. What's the backstory?
Yeah, the story that I got goes back way. Pence was groomed, and he was groomed by his wife, and his wife was part of the CIA, and her job was to meet up with him at a church. They were going to have a romantic affair, and then she was going to be Mrs. And she started to groom him long time ago. And the things that he's really not that smart. He's really not that smart of guy. And he was easily manipulated by her because she was much smarter, and they keep her out of the limelight. But, Trump is kind of the guy to keep your enemies, your friends close and your enemies closer, so you can keep your fingers on and see what's going on. I don't really see that Trump was Pence was any really big problem politically in the country.
He didn't look like anything. I agree. But from an astral point of view, whatever was using his body was not right. And then you see him, kind of standing there at the inauguration for for Biden, and kind of blending and mixing with all the others. And like I said, remember what I said early on in this conversation, that those that are in certain programs recognize each other.
Yes, that's a good
and
point.
there was familiar. He was more comfortable with them than he was with Trump towards the end, because a walk-in or something happened where, like you said, he seemed to be on the same page as Trump, and then somehow he wasn't. And not only that, but challenging him, almost like revealing that he was completely against him. So that's where you see that there's also, it looks like a little bit of a kind of an unusual lifestyle past that he had, that kind of surprised me, because he kind of portrayed himself as some kind of Bible thumper, and he was always walking around with a Bible in his hand and acting like he was very Christian. But you see him in earlier images that it looks like he's had maybe other types of alternate lifestyles, or I don't know. I don't know. It just.
You said that so gently too. Yes.
I mean, like I don't really care what people do, but it's almost like, don't portray yourself as super Christian or righteous, and just be normal and say who you are. But I mean, it's like these facades. There's a facade on a facade on a facade, and so you're like sifting through all these different facades to figure out what's the truth of what's happening here. Or is it multiple truths? Is it like one being, are they just an empty vessel and there's the multiple things coming through them? There was a movie that I saw. There's an actor that sort of looks like Trump, and I'll have to probably dig it up and I'll share it with you afterwards. He sort of looks like Trump. And what's really weird is he has this guy as an advisor who comes in and he says something to him, and the advisor looks like a guy that they took a picture of when he was in court in one of those circumstances. Like I think it was in New York. And the guy looks like he is not human fully. And in this movie, it's almost like it felt like they were talking to Trump, and then this other guy shows up, and I'm looking at it saying, where have I seen this before? And I started putting it together. But the idea of the movie was that they were questioning, because he was going into almost like a world domination type of thing. Now, you and I know that Trump had this magnetism and energy that was quite powerful, and that he could have fulfilled a role of like like a universal global world government. So but they were frowning upon it, and I said, I'm wondering if that's why maybe some of the galactics stepped in and didn't allow Trump to proceed. Not that they were helping us with bringing in Biden at all. I don't know what that was. Maybe something from the underworld, crawled out of the crevices of the earth and decided to take over. But
in the beginning, when Trump came out, leaders from different countries wanted Trump and wanted his input into their own country. I'll give you a perfect example. Japan was probably number one on the list. They loved his leadership. They hadn't seen that anywhere globally. And the whole notion of King Trump governing the world, it might be on the back burner, but they didn't put that one out, because there's nobody else like Trump currently, no one. And he's assembled enough positive people, and I do subscribe to the Galactic Federation. And I remember
there's more than just the Galactic Federation. I mean, that's one group, but there's multiple. There was an interference, and there was something that was stopping it, and I'm not sure 100% of what did stop it, but there's something. He has a problem. Whatever that problem is, unless it's resolved, and it's not just the Democratic Party, it's something bigger, because he was already something bigger. So in order to disassemble that, either something's going through the timelines and cutting him out, or doing something with his programming. There's a bunch of different things that are happening, because like I know that there are ways that things are done, and those that are put in power have levels of protection. Those protections went down. And so that's why he ended up here. And then they keep bringing him into court, which is pretty bizarre. I mean, a lot of the things are, ridiculous, absolutely, and unfounded, from a political standpoint, a legal standpoint. But they continue to pursue it anyhow. And, having that power, they shouldn't have that power. But there's something amiss. And like, I'm not for or against him in any way, like, oh, I want him to lose, or has absolutely nothing to do with my opinion. So I'm going to just put my opinion out there. The only thing I know for sure is when you are, in order to come into that role of power, you have to be in alignment with or have these levels of protection. So say, for example, JFK, right? We'll bring up JFK because that's, the Anons talk about JFK constantly and associated with Trump.
Are you familiar with the meeting on the moon of Jupiter, Ganymede? Did you ever hear of that meeting where the Intergalactic Confederation all came here to watch what was going on in our galaxy, the ascension process, basically? Because they said it was the first time they ever had a planet, talking about Earth, where everybody was going to ascend and take their body with. Because normally that's not the case. You would decarnate, be in the spirit world, and then ascend. And then you could manifest whatever you wanted. But they said this was different. Do you remember that meeting? Ganymede.
Do you want to hear my opinion on that?
Sure.
Okay. Do you know who Ganymede is?
No, Ganymede is the largest moon outside of Jupiter.
Jupiter has been run by a being called Dionysus. Ganymede was a young lover of the fake Zeus. Zeus was originally in charge of Jupiter, but Dionysus, posing as Zeus, took over Ganymede. So then we had all the moons got corrupted because of him. Ganymede was the cupbearer. I've had a lot of run-ins with Ganymede. He's a young, like boyish looking energy. And then you have the Callisto, which is another moon, which we had that whole Callisto protocol. I don't know if you've heard about that. That's something that Peter has exposed. It's a prison. It's called Black Iron Prison. There's a lot of crazy things happening off of those moons. So with all of that corruption, I'm not, like, I don't want to argue with people that feel like they have insight on something, but I'm seeing just the opposite. And I don't know if there is some kind of, I don't know where the information is coming from originally, but do I believe that there's a group that's rooting for us and there's a galactic group? Yes. Do I believe they're coming from that region? That would be illusion to me. I have a strong feeling that that is not accurate.
Yeah, I'm open-minded, so I like to hear the opposite side, and I don't get offended when somebody says, well, I don't agree with that. Guess what? If I only saw this side, it's certainly nice when somebody else comes forward and says, well, here's this is how I get it.
I believe that scenario is happening, not in that region. That's all I'm going to say. And, we can show information about Ganymede and who he is. And, you've worked with planets. Planets are personas. They're beings. And they're ancient beings that are running those planets. And some of them, they have been using humans as slaves, in some of these different regions. And you can hear that from other, people that have disclosed that information, which I believe is true and accurate. And the Callisto Protocol is a perfect example. Peter and I, we talked about Callisto. We talked about Io, which is another moon. And then Ganymede also has some problems. And it could be part related to the 12D Pleiadian that he talks about, that are nefarious group that were once in agreement with the other Pleiadians but are no longer. So,
as a matter of fact, we had some really nice long bits of conversation where we didn't have this problem, but I always
but touching on some, yeah, I mean, it could be that they don't like our conversation, or because I just mentioned the 12D Pleiadians and they get a little nasty. But I did find that movie that I was telling you about, so I'm going to share that with you, and maybe you can take a look at it. It's called Time Runner. Rolf was kind enough to find that for us, and it's during an unstoppable alien invasion in 2022. And so I'll share some imagery and so forth, or comparisons of what I saw while watching this movie. I think it's definitely, it's like one of those old classics.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I'll look it up and then maybe watch it later. I've been watching old movies, like The Day the Earth Stood Still, The Red Planet, Mars, and stuff like that. These movies from the 50s, there's a lot of truth in those movies.
They were right on.
Yes.
Yeah, years ago, I interviewed someone that actually was working with the production of Star Wars. And he talked to the guy that created that. And the guy was very aloof and he was very careful what he said. But he clearly had a connection to ETs in constructing this storyline. So, I think there's, like you said, it's the truth there.
Yeah, the same thing is true with Star Trek. I had a 3-star general was giving a lecture. He says, listen, everything you see in Star Trek, we have and we can do. As a matter of fact, they created the movie, the movies and the television to introduce to society the fact that we were in space, that we were communicating with other alien races, and they were actually part of the crew. We wanted people to not indoctrinate them, but to introduce them to the concept that this was not only possible, but this was happening. And we know that Gene
Roddenberry
was a contactee.
Yeah, oh, definitely. And this is what we've been talking about for years with the ACIO, that it's soft disclosure. They're letting us know through these programs, but for some people that are very cynical, they look at it and say, oh, well, it's on TV, so everything's fake. They're just making it up. And no, that's not true. It's the other way around. It's coming up because they already know about it. And also there is almost like a 50-year gap, or if not more, of further advancement than what they're showing. So they're okay with showing it. There's this 50-year thing that they use in the military, regarding disclosure. Although when it comes to video games, a lot of that information is slipping through. So those that are able to access the future are disclosing a lot of those pieces of information.
The gamers that are playing these games with a high level of expertise too, because the games are much more sophisticated. But your 50 year is interesting, and I want to make a point, because back in the 40s, we had the ETs came down, and the first group was a positive group, and they basically told the president through the military. You remember this, right? They said, listen,
Yep.
We have all this wonderful technology for you, but you guys got to stop playing with the atom bomb. You set off these explosions. You tore a hole in the time-space continuum way on the other side of the galaxy. You're not even aware of it. Well, the military said, well, if we give them up the atomic bomb, they'll probably come and conquer us. So with the free will, we told them, no, we're not going to do it. And they got back in their ship and they took off. Well, a little time later, the not so nice guys showed up, the tall whites, and they said, hey, screw your atomic bombs, because they call it atomic, it wasn't nuclear. You can keep them. we are having a genetic problem with our DNA. So what we need to do is we need to take a few of your humans for the DNA so that we can refresh our own DNA. And the military said, well, it ain't us, so yeah, go ahead. And they gave them the technology. Now, the alien said, we have one condition. You have to share the technology with the public. Got to let them know what we have. Well, the military said, we don't want to turn on the information faucet. So they dribbled out information, and 7 years went by, and they said, no, we can't do it. It'll be a national security. You'll have wars all over the place. So they bought another 7 years. They bought another 7 years. 7 times 7, 49 years went by, and they hadn't told the public of the over 6,000 high-tech technologies that had been brought to Earth, like anti-gravity devices, free energy, replicators, all this small stuff. So now we're at the 50-year mark. Well, at the 49 year, they said, listen, don't worry, we're going to tell the public. That's what you've been seeing now, is the ETs are telling the public, because the military will never do it. They don't want to give up their toys. I mean, there's
they're giving it to other, but they're giving it to other nations. They're giving it to nefarious people. It's almost like you can't have a gun, but the criminals are allowed to have one because we're too afraid to go and take it from them, and it's like, so that the honest citizen is getting hit in so many different directions.
Well, they want to take out the honest citizen. They want to depopulate 95% of the population on the planet. It was
of the honest people. Yeah, the honest people that actually pay them, that actually pay taxes, that actually live by the rules that they've created. And those are the first ones they want to take out. Yeah, they're brilliant. They're the smartest ones around, aren't they? I get really frustrated over it, Dean. They can go, they can literally go. We can even talk about mud floods and how they had all this tech. And prior to this, the electric cars and all this other stuff we think is, a great ingenuity at this point. No, they've already known about a lot of different things. It's a shame what we're exposed, all the chemicals, all the horrible things that they're deliberately dumping, creating all these explosions right now. It's a criminal.
I was going to finish by saying, I think the bad guys are making a big mistake because they think they've got a little more free range than what they have, and they're exposing themselves. One thing that I know that has happened is over in the last couple of years, we've removed many of the main bad guy players. We put them on a ship and got them off the world. So we have a lot of secondary people that are order takers and usually used to taking orders from higher ups, running around with nobody giving them any orders, and they're making mistakes, and we're seeing that every day. They're not making in-depth decisions like a chess game. They're making stupid mistakes, and they're getting found out. And the executions are going.
These are also the program people that they've programmed that are like the shooters and all those that are, they're mind controlled. They're completely mind controlled. And
that's crazy. I mean, I don't know if you have a gun, but you should have one.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't discuss anything like that. It might be a good time for us to wrap up the conversation just to keep it within the confines of our show, but we can do this again sometime.
I enjoyed with you, Jessica. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much, Dean, and it was a pleasure to talk to you. We've known each other over the years, and it's nice that finally, I don't have a lot of people on the show as far as interviews because I've been hyper-focused on my work, but I'm grateful. I always enjoy when I have a conversation with someone that has a lot of interesting points to contribute. So it's a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to some other some good things ahead. And also thank you for everyone who's listening, and we appreciate your support. continue to listen and be strong. And until next time.
You have been listening to Andronetalks Radio. Join us on YouTube channel Jessica Arael Morocco and visit her website at www.readingsbyarael.com.